To my decision session on Tuesday, 22nd of April. My name's Kate Revilius and I'm Executive Member for Transport. As we come to each item, I'll ask officers to introduce themselves and their role. So for the agenda today, no apologies for absence and no declarations of interest. I'm going to sign the minutes from the last meeting. Thank you. And that brings us on to public participation. So I'd like to invite Councillor Fenton up first. Would you like a 30-second reminder? Are you happy? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I support the officer recommendation in relation to the Tadcaster Road parking bays, which I hope will create a space for people to park who are using local businesses. There are existing issues locally caused by non-resident parking, and residents are keen to explore how this could be tackled through a revised Res Park scheme. On the city centre sustainable transport corridor, I support engagement with residents and businesses on potential measures to support bus reliability and encourage walking, wheeling and cycling. I'll be studying the detailed plans, as I'm sure lots of people will, when they are published, and we'll be encouraging people to have their say. Any scheme will only succeed if it's part of a proper joined-up approach to tackling the city's traffic problems. For example, dualling the outer ring road, in my view, is key to supporting measures to reduce city centre through traffic. It will also be important to have clarity on the administration's pledge to modify the provision of city centre car parking. For example, understanding how traffic flows will change as a result of the planned closure of Castle Car Park. A bus network review was badged as a short-term commitment in the local transport strategy implementation plan, and ideally this needs to happen in parallel with the corridor engagement. We obviously need to avoid a situation where bus reliability improves along the Hughes Bridge corridor, but gets worse on other routes. The report states that a key objective is to ensure that people understand the scheme as a whole, not just the individual elements. So I'd like to see information shared, not just on the anticipated benefits to bus reliability along the corridor, but the potential increased journey times for private vehicles and buses on other routes, if there is simply displacement of traffic rather than a reduction. Finally, the urgent item. At Budget Council in February, I spoke in support of a Lib Dem budget amendment on parking charges, which was intended to allow time for the review of city centre parking provision to be completed. That amendment fell, and we're now in a situation which is set out in the paper. In terms of options, the exec member may wish to consider reverting to the charging arrangements in place prior to April, with an increase for inflation at Micklegate and other affected locations such as Wormgate, East Parade, and I'm sure there may be others. That approach may allow time for meaningful discussion with businesses, churches and others throughout the coming months, and for the city centre parking review to be completed. One final request, whichever option is pursued, it would be helpful if information could be shared on any impact on revenue projections from parking income. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will take all of those points into consideration. Thank you. Next, I've got a remote speaker, Doreen McGill from York Bus Forum. Doreen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the chair of York Bus Forum and I'm speaking on behalf of them, but also as an individual who walks, cycles and uses buses in York. So I'm speaking about the bus corridor. Obviously, the aim of improving bus journey times through the city centre is one that most people would applaud. The current emphasis on buses running to time has resulted in through buses like the Coastliner, which is mentioned in the report, having lengthy stops in York. And I looked at the coastliner timetable this morning, and in some cases it allows 20 minutes between arriving at the Stonebow and arriving at the station. Like a lot of people, I can walk it in less time. It's very annoying for those of us who live on the east side of the city and need to get to the west side or beyond, because you end up sitting. I've sat on a bus for more than 10 minutes at the Stonebow while the clock ticks down on departure time. And it also seems a bit odd that this standing time is on the way into the city centre before this Ousegate corridor, which has been highlighted as the main area for delays. At the bus forum, what I really want to talk about is obviously the participation, the public consultation process. We're keen to point out, and I have pointed out before, that despite our efforts at the bus forum, we are not representative of bus users as a whole. Our age profile, unfortunately, is considerably above average. And so although we're pleased that we have been mentioned in the report as part of public participation, for that reason, we would encourage all efforts to reach out to a wider public with this consultation. And I'm disappointed that there seems to be little awareness that this is going to take place. May is fast approaching, so we'd like to see details of how and where consultation is envisaged. In particular, when and where will these face-to-face meetings be held? In my dealings with bus operators, I find that too often they tell me that information is available online, yet it takes only a couple of conversations with people at bus stops to make it obvious that this information hasn't got through to the people who need it. The other issue that we've so far not seen exactly what's going to be discussed in these meetings. We haven't seen the plan. The documents refer to buses, wheelers, walkers and cyclists, all of whom have different requirements. Given that we can't just push buildings back to create space, what are the options being considered? Surely these need to be available to the public well in advance of any consultation, and we feel that the time is running out. One other issue is that the documents do say that outside of the bus corridor, there are other considerations. And one thing I think should be taken into consideration is the delays to buses along the Piccadilly, the bottom of Piccadilly, especially at times when there are events on, like the Christmas market, the ice sculptures. I've sat on a bus for more than half an hour on that stretch because of the cars queuing to get into the car park. And if you want to improve the times between the station and the Stonebow, which is stated in the documents, I think that also needs looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's really useful. And certainly I very much applaud the comment you make about reaching out to a wider public audience. And that is very much part of our intention. But thank you for bringing all those views to our attention today. Okay, next on the list, I've got Tony May, who's speaking on behalf of York Civic Trust. Do you want a 30-second reminder? Do. Okay.
Just in case. Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking in connection with the City Centre Sustainable Transport Corridor. We strongly support the report before you and the recommendation that the Council now consult on the details. And I must say I strongly endorse Doreen McGill's comments of a moment ago on the nature of that consultation. As the report makes clear, the potential benefits to bus journey times and reliability are substantial, and that should be a benefit to residents, to visitors, and to those in the wider region who might expect to use the bus to shop in York, hence benefiting the economy. We also anticipate significant benefits for pedestrians walking along the corridor and crossing it, and also, of course, cyclists on the corridor and on the national cycle route. And one thing that doesn't come out, I think, in the report is the potential knock-on benefits for the major developments at Castle Gateway, York Central, and York Station. One other point that I think is important to stress is that this is wholly compatible with the council's intended movement and place plan and rebalancing the use of roads as places to be and places to move through, and the opportunity to reduce movement through the centre gives the opportunity to improve it as a place, and the Civic Trust has already put forward proposals for ways in which visitors and residents can appreciate more fully the area they're walking through. There are risks, and these have been touched on already. There is the potential risk of extra delays elsewhere. We've done quite a bit of analysis on this, and our analysis suggests it should be possible to mitigate those risks, particularly if the adjacent junctions are redesigned to match the change in traffic. For us, the main concern is access to the city centre and to different parts of it. It will be really important to make sure that access is maintained to all parts of the centre for all users, and particularly for disabled users, and that it is well signed. And we will be looking critically at the detailed proposals when they come up to ensure that that is being done, and that we've learnt from attempts to do this elsewhere. On that basis, we strongly support the recommendation before you, and recommend that you approve the project initiation document and the launch of the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for all those points, and they'll very much be taken into consideration. Thank you. Next, I've got Gwen Swinburne. Would you like a 30-second reminder? Okay.
Councillor, I speak for the Groves community, united in outrage. You imposed a 300% plus increase in on-street parking charges, plus new evening fees without any consultation. These changes, buried in fine print within hundreds of pages of budget papers, were never raised in committee reports, public discussions, or the Equalities Impact Assessment released just 1 working hour ago. No one was informed. I have a petition, over 500 signatures, every open businesses collected despite a bank holiday, showing our deep opposition. The Groves is amongst York's poorest areas, far from the bustling city core. These rises hit the most vulnerable hardest. Low-income residents who rely on affordable parking to access shops and services, struggling small businesses dependent on customer access to survive, churches, service providers and community hubs, the heart of our social fabric. Yet for Micklegate churchgoers and influential Labour voices, you suspended charges in an unrecorded decision announced only in a Labour Party press release. Where's the transparency? This stark disparity breaches your public sector equality duty, discriminating against the Grove's protected groups, elderly, disabled and religious residents. It restricts their opportunities, fosters resentment, and violates all 3 PSED limbs: equality, opportunity, and community cohesion. Your withheld EIA admitted negative impacts on vulnerable groups, but offered no mitigation, a serious oversight. Its silence on the 300% plus Res Park on-street parking hikes further flouts your legal duties. A Labour-led council should champion deprived areas, not grant relief to the influential. Decisions benefiting prominent figures raise fairness concerns. These charges threaten lasting harm to our community, businesses, churches and services, risking judicial review for breaching equality laws and basic governance principles. Adding this urgent item without notice is another failure. You must defer to the full executive for proper consultation. This is a key decision. Meanwhile, you must treat all areas the same, commit to public consultation within 30 days, and cancel or reinstate all charges equitably. The Groves deserves justice, restore trust, protect our community. Thank you, Chair. I'll send this through to you.
Thank you. Just before you go, I'd like to say that there was a full consultation and those charges were published. I'm not inviting.
They were published in that small little table 5 days before the decision was made. No consultation on the on-street charges at all.
There was
none.
A full, and just regarding the equalities impact assessment, I saw that equalities impact assessment before this went to the budget, and it was published not an hour ago, but alongside the paper, is my understanding.
Which is in 1 working day, 1 hour, 1 working day, because there's no working days between when it was published on Thursday night and your meeting this morning.
So it was published with the paper. Yeah.
1 working hour before this
as
meeting.
The paper was, and
As
the
the paper
equalities impact assessment has been available if anyone had wanted to ask.
We didn't know it was even there, Chair.
Well,
I mean, please.
It was there.
And it doesn't mention on-street parking hikes either. Thank you for engaging though, Chair. I appreciate it.
My next speaker is Anne Norton, who I believe is joining us virtually. Anne, are you there?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Anne. Yeah, would you like a 30-second reminder?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm concerned that the needs of disabled people are being overlooked when they should be built into the proposals for the transport corridor. I was not able to attend the last Access Forum meeting where these proposals were discussed. I'm using this opportunity to comment. The LC Whip discussed the possibility of bus gates, and as the York Disability Rights Forum representative, I stressed that we would not support this unless access is retained for blue badge holders. This is because disabled people cannot perform modal shift and so would be penalised for their inability to take the bus. There is mention under Benefits and Challenges point 3 of the potential reduction in car numbers. However, this fails to take into account disabled people. The York buses only have 1 wheelchair space. This means even with increased reliability of buses, there is no increased capacity. In November, there were 19 access refusals and the trend appears to be upwards. Also, there are some for whom using the bus is not possible. Blue badge holders who cannot make modal shift should not be penalised by the bus gates and need to have access maintained. Increase in journey time is an access issue for people with fatigue, pain, etc., and a blue badge exemption is a reasonable mitigation. The fact this is not even mentioned in the initial documentation is concerning. The Council has obligations under the public sector equality duty to disabled people. This means that potential changes need to be assessed and mitigations provided. There is also no equality impact assessment. To say this will come with the consultation is not good enough. How can informed comments be given if there is no identification of risk and corresponding mitigations? If this is a living document, then a preliminary impact assessment should have been provided with the same manner and the same update capacity. Disability is first mentioned in points 9 and 10, which are about the secondary benefits from the proposals. Primary concern for disabled pedestrians is not pavement widths, but the provision of dropped curves and tactile paving or other safe crossing points, provision of blue badge parking, benches, removal of sets and maintenance of pavement surfaces. For those with limited mobility, they need parking that is 50 metres away from their destination, in line with inclusive mobility guidance. Accessible cycle parking needs to be provided in a way that does not cause pavement obstruction. Options for Micklegate were discussed and dissected metre by metre by the LC Whip steering group volunteers with Sistra. I hope this work can be found and used. Closing access to the central post office via Spurriergate outside of Foot Street hours will mean either an unnecessarily long detour, which will increase traffic on other streets, or further disabled exclusion. The proposed bus gates cover a considerable area. Schemes for active travel need to be inclusive and understand that for some disabled people, 50 metres is their walking capacity, and to allow them to walk means also allowing them to use their blue badge, which is their reasonable adjustment. Issues of distance fatigue and modal shift were understood by this Labour Council when in opposition and opposed to the blue badge ban. This scheme raises the same issues and runs the risk of being another blue badge ban by stealth if proper adjustments and mitigations are not made. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, really appreciate the thought that's gone into this. I just want to make clear that there is no scheme design that we are consulting on at the moment. The pre-engagement that has happened is around high-level options to understand the issues that have arisen. And it's really valuable to hear what you've said and what the Access Forum have said. And the reason that there is no equality impact assessment as yet is because we have not got a scheme to do that on. That is very much part of what the pre-engagement is doing, but it's very valuable to hear those comments now from you. But I just want to be clear that there isn't a scheme, there isn't a design that we are focused on at the moment. But thank you for those comments.
Thank you.
So my next speaker is Diane Rowath. Yes. Yeah, of course. So we'll go round from your left. Darren, do you want to introduce yourself?
Team leader. Michael Howard, I'm the head of highways and transport.
I'm Kate. And
I'm Ben from Democratic Services. We met downstairs. I'm just taking the minutes.
Morning, Tom Horner. I'm head of travel behaviour and head of transport policy and active travel behaviour.
would you like a 30-second reminder, Diane? Okay. It is, yes.
Travel corridor pavement does not address how the council. Not all. What do it? Oh, is it some votes from the other? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The Sustainable Transport Corridor paper does not address how the council is protecting the interests of disabled and older people. Rather, it seems to imply that consultation will do that. This is not an issue for consultation. You have a responsibility to be clear that any scheme cannot be discriminatory. There are very good reasons to reduce car use, but you must protect people with protected characteristics who are not able to make the modal shift to walk, cycle, or use public transport. Be under no illusion, there are people who cannot travel without a vehicle, so improving pavements is no mitigation. When you consulted on the LTS implementation plan, we sought reassurance that blue badge holders would not be excluded. When you consulted your Access Forum, we stressed that blue badge holders and taxis should not be excluded from yet another area of the city. We referred to the backlash from the blue badge ban, which you resolved on being elected, when you also adopted the social model of disability. This report makes no mention of either of those. Neither does it mention that nearly 1 in 4 people are disabled and 20,000 are over 75. 25% of taxi journeys to the city centre are by older people. Where are those people's interests in this report? Over my lifetime, I have seen disabled people's access shrink dramatically. This report has 2 objectives which should help: to support an inclusive, accessible, affordable city and improve accessibility for protected characteristic groups. This PID will not achieve either. You say it can be amended. I urge you to do that. In support, I refer to the UK Parliament Transport Commission report, Access Denied, Rights versus Reality. It says disabled people need to be able to rely on their local authority to prioritise inclusivity and non-discrimination. There is far too great a burden placed on disabled people to hold authorities to account. Accessibility needs to be recognised as an issue of human rights and protection from discrimination, not an option. Accessibility cannot be set aside when deemed to be in conflict with other policy goals, in this case, keeping buses to time and improving air quality. York will soon use human rights and equality impact assessments, most effective at concept stage. This is a concept that does not make any attempt to be inclusive. I reaffirm allowing blue badge holders and taxis will not affect keeping buses to time or improving air quality. So I urge you to act now and insert into the PID that disabled people must not be disadvantaged in any plans. This is not an issue on which to consult. As evidence so far, human rights and equality legislation and the social model supports this principle. Blue badge holders and taxis should not be banned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think just to reiterate that the plans, the high level plans that have been shared as part of that pre-engagement are exactly that. They're high level plans without a firm outline as yet. And we're very much listening to all that feedback, and that will inform what goes into the public consultation and the shape of the scheme going forward, but really value the feedback that's coming through so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next speaker is Andy Shrimpton on behalf of York Cycle Campaign. Do you want a 30-second?
No, thanks. So on York's city centre's sustainable transport corridor, York Cycle Campaign is delighted with the news that City of York Council is finally moving to address the chronic issue of traffic congestion that has plagued this city for decades. It is entirely appropriate that in doing so, priority is given to buses and active transport, both walking and cycling, which collectively have been the subject of much worthy motherhood and apple pie political rhetoric over the years, but with no effort to put them front and centre of the city's transport policy where they belong. So we warmly welcome the news that there will be a sustainable transport corridor in the city centre and will participate fully in this consultation. Whilst we anticipate there will be voices raised against such measures, we urge the council to be steadfast in its vision of giving primacy to buses and active transport, as we simply cannot continue in a steadily growing city to accommodate the voracious appetite of the private car for public space. There is simply no alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take all that into account. Thank you. So that concludes all the public speakers for today. You're welcome to stay if you want to, or to leave at this point if you. Okay, so on to the next agenda item, which is item number 5, the review of statutory consultation for parking bays on Tadcaster Road. Darren, are you going to introduce this item?
Yeah, that's me. Hi, good morning, everybody. So this request came about following works on Tadcaster Road a couple years ago when we made some minor changes to the parking restrictions. The businesses near the Slingsby Grove axis was concerned that there was no consideration of the bays there and wished for the loading bay to be moved. So as on the follow up from that consultation, we said we'd engage with the businesses about the potential. On that response, we say all the response we got was remove the loading bay and go to a time bay on the area. Since that consultation, we've gone out for statutory consultation on that basis. We did receive some objections to the bay, the change of the times from the neighbouring streets, mainly. So the residents of Slingsby Grove had concerns about people parking too close to the junction, and then people blocking drives on there. As part of those complaints, we did request for refreshment of lines. I believe that hasn't actually happened yet, because I received an email last week from residents saying that it's still a concern from them. So I'll chase it up with our maintenance team and our parking enforcement about issues around that junction. And then residents of Royal Chase as well, who were concerned about the impact on their street of potential longer term parking occurring from the businesses. As the councillor mentioned in his he mentioned about residents parking potentially. We did receive one representation that said residents parking could maybe consider, but no one actually instigated that they would want that to occur. So we haven't got any proposals at the moment, but if residents do come forward, we could consider it. And so we're taking it, and there was one representation from a business in objection who had concerns about where their staff would park because we were moving even for more parking. But as our transport policy states, we would expect that they use other forms of transport and the bays will be there for the benefit of the users, the businesses, rather than the actual section. So the recommendation within the report is to make the order as consulted. So on the northwest side outside the shops, 1 hour bay, Monday to Saturday 9 AM to 5 PM, and on the opposite side of the road, 3 hour limit, Monday to Saturday 9 AM to 5 PM, and the removal of the loading bay completely.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really clear, and thank you for all the work you've done in listening and engaging to the residents and the businesses in the area. I think this is a good solution in terms of it's preventing the space from being used for long stay parking and therefore supporting the short stay parking needs for the local businesses. And it reduces that short-term parking on some of the surrounding streets. We will have to just watch and see if we end up with long stay parking happening on some of those surrounding streets. And if Councillor Fenton and his colleagues feel that residents want to bring forward an application for Res Park, then as you say, we can consider that.
Sorry, there's one other thing.
Oh yeah.
One of the residents did mention about the introduction of white H bar markings across junctions to make it a bit more visible, because they did feel that some people probably won't notice them. So we said we'd review that as well in future if that was becoming an issue as well.
Okay. So we can sort of keep a watching eye on this. And it's on an excellent park and ride route. So in terms of staff being able to get to businesses, I think our encouragement would be to use the park and ride. And it very much supports our transport strategy in enabling greater use of sustainable transport options, and encouraging everyone to use the park and ride if possible. So yeah, I'm very happy to approve option 1 to implement as advertised the traffic regulation order to remove the loading bay and change the duration of parking on the bays on Tadcaster Road between Royal Chase and Slingsby Grove with the limits suggested in the paper. Can I just make sure that we do refresh the lines before that goes into place? Yeah, that's lovely. But yeah, thank you. Happy for that to go forward. Thank you. Right, that brings us on to item 6, which is the City Centre Sustainable Transport Corridor. Tom, do you want to introduce that one?
Yes, can do, Councillor. I'll keep this fairly brief because I think the report covers most things. But firstly, thank you to all the speakers for comments and time taken to speak today. Really helpful for us. The report presents the project initiation document for the City Centre Transport Corridor. We will be looking for an improved name on this as soon as possible ahead of any public consultation, and we're seeking to move the project through to public consultation stage. So 72% of respondents to our big transport conversation agreed with the principle of providing more priority routes for buses. There's significant mention of improving bus journey times, bus reliability through the local transport strategy, through the bus improvement plan, and the Department for Transport has awarded us £2 million to develop proposals for the City Centre corridor, and that has been topped up further through the York and North Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority. We've begun initial conversations on ideas and options to deliver the proposals and to look at ideas with key stakeholder groups, including York Access Forum, and we've valued the time and contributions from them. Just to stress, nothing has been decided at this moment. We're just having those very, very early discussions. One of the core principles of what we're developing and how we've been developing options for how it might be implemented is to ensure that we retain vehicle access to all existing parking spaces and loading bays. So should the recommendations be approved, officers will continue these conversations, and we'll certainly be speaking to Doreen, the bus forum, continue conversations with the access forum, work through any of those sort of project designs as they've been developed ahead of any public consultation. And these sort of conversations will directly shape what goes public and what we speak to the communities about. Absolutely take the point that was made around the need to reach a wide range of people through the public consultation, and we're working extensively with our colleagues in communications to develop the communications plan that's in the project initiation document, and to bring that forward in such a way that means we can reach as many people across the city and that use the city as possible to inform any final project design that comes forward.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Tom and all the officers who've been involved in this project to date. There's been a huge amount of work has gone into pulling together this project initiation document and to do some of that early engagement, which is so important to iron out some of the wrinkles and to understand those local perspectives. So it's been really valuable, and that is ongoing. I'd like to stress that this project is not just about that city centre corridor. It's actually about bringing a far wider benefit beyond the boundaries of York for people using public transport from Whitby, Scarborough, Thirsk, Harrogate. So in terms of this project is really central to improving travel across the whole region, not just in the centre of York. The data and modelling so far suggests it brings really significant benefits, and it's a very important project. And we can see at the moment that the amount of delay and disruption in the centre of York is really significant along that corridor. So it carries, as the paper says, over 1,000 buses per day are going along that corridor, and it's the worst 20% congested part of the city. And in terms of bus subsidies, we as a council are subsidising to the tune of over 3.5 million to keep buses running. And one of the reasons that they're not commercially viable is because of all the delays that they experience on that corridor. So this is a really important part of the city to sort out, to get it moving, to bring benefits to absolutely everybody, including people using private vehicles, because it will bring benefits all round. It will make transport easier for everybody by freeing up that corridor. As we've said a number of times now, there is no absolute design at this stage that's been approved. No decision has been made. We've been having early engagement with key stakeholders. That is ongoing. We haven't managed to talk to all key stakeholders yet. In recent weeks, we've carried out that early engagement to gather those views and help inform what we do consult on. It's unfortunate that some of that content has been issued publicly, and it's out of context, and that's led to some misunderstandings. So we need to do some further early engagement and make sure that those misunderstandings are ironed out. So the other thing I want to be clear on is that this scheme will not prevent vehicle access to any of that corridor, that all areas that are currently available to park along the corridor and in the surrounding roads will remain available with access enabled at all times. And that's a principle of the scheme. So it's not about preventing access, and certainly for businesses and for blue badge holders, that access will be maintained, and it's a principle. What the scheme absolutely does aim to do is remove the unnecessary through vehicle traffic, and to reduce that delay to the buses and create an improved environment for people who are walking, wheelchair users, wheeling and cycling in the area. And as the project initiation document also says, there could be additional benefits to bus stops, to pavement use, to crossings, including air quality, alternative uses of the highway, maybe more blue badge parking, pavement cafes, green spaces, all of those things which we will hope to learn more about what people want to see via the public consultation. So we will be listening to people at that point about how they would like, what those other benefits could be and what they would like to see coming out of the scheme. We know that there's strong support for improving public transport. Over 88% of respondents in our transport consultation agreed or strongly agreed with this. And this scheme has been identified as one that can bring significant benefit for bus travel and address many of the issues identified in that public consultation by pedestrians and wheelchair users and cyclists. So I'm really pleased to be approving the project initiation document. So option 1 on this, agree the proposed project initiation document, and also to approve option 2, approve, I'm looking for the next bit, finding my place here. And to take the second recommendation to approve the carrying out of a public consultation on a series of potential measures to reduce bus journey times, improve bus reliability on the Arusia Street, Micklegate, Tower Street corridor, and to delegate authority to the Director of Environment, Transport and Planning to finalise the details of the design to inform the basis of that public consultation. So in terms of, we're bringing that consultation forward once we have carried out the pre-engagement with the key stakeholders. So that will be continuing over the next few weeks, and then we'll be ready to do the public consultation. And we absolutely are committed to ensuring that that reaches a really wide range of people and users, and that everybody has opportunity to have a say on this really important scheme. So thank you. Okay, and then we have one item of urgent business, which is around city centre parking. And Michael, I believe you're going to introduce that.
Thank you, Kate. This item relates to specific concerns raised about new parking charges in Micklegate, Priory Street and the Bishopthorpe Road car park. The charges were set in early 2025 following extensive consultation on budget and approved by Executive and full Council as part of the budget setting process. Officers have followed the statutory process, which requires publication of notices for the charges at least 21 days before implementation, and the new charges came into effect on the 11th of April 2025. The specific concerns which have been raised are that the removal of free parking on Sundays in the Micklegate area will impact on the local churches. The removal of the unique half-hour payment for Micklegate parking has a detrimental impact on businesses. The standardisation of parking charges in all car parks has a significant impact on Bishopthorpe Road car park, as it had a lower price than other car parks previously. Following a member's request, a temporary suspension of parking charges has been put in place at Micklegate and Priory Street. This paper has given options for temporary pausing of some charges to allow a short period of review of the impact of these changes. The changes to the Sunday morning parking on Micklegate has not yet been legally advertised, so the executive member does need to determine if they wish to pause this. This decision could be deferred to allow further engagement or to advertise to seek further community views. At Bishopthorpe Road car park, the council can only legally charge the advertised parking charges. Any new charging structure which the member may wish to apply would require 21 days of advertising. A decision needs to be made whether to extend and formalise the suspension of parking charges at Micklegate and Priory Street beyond today. If extended, this would negate the impact of the new charging structure on the community. However, it also potentially has a negative impact, as it risks that the free parking this close to the city centre would lead to the prevention of some community parking as intended. If suspension of parking charges is not extended, the council can only legally charge those charges which have already been advertised, i.e. no half-hourly option on Micklegate and Priory Street. The proposals are therefore to pause the advertising or implementing of the charges on Sunday morning in Micklegate and Priory Street to allow engagement with the community, to determine whether to extend the temporary suspension of parking charges in Micklegate and Priory Street or revert to the advertised and legal charges as were approved by full council, to determine whether a temporary suspension of charges at the Bishopthorpe Road car park should be applied, or implement the advertised legal charges that were approved by council. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so this came about when I was approached by business owners after the advertisement of new parking charges, and they requested that they could engage with me prior to those charges being introduced. I asked officers to draft a paper on the process of how we could engage with them and whether we were able to pause the charges in the meantime and look at whether any minor amendments were needed. I want to stress that this budget consultation on car parking went out to over 7,000 businesses, and we had a good response from businesses and residents across the city. This paper is not looking at revisiting the parking charge model. It's been through full council and has been supported by the majority of people who responded to that budget consultation. What I am looking to do is to meet and engage with any businesses and church communities who have specific concerns about their local area, to understand if any minor amendments would help to alleviate some of those concerns, and to work with them on the travel to their area and improving the travel to their area. The paper in front of me today gives me the option to extend the temporary suspension of charges. My understanding is that this would result in free parking on street in these locations for a period of at least 21 days and beyond. In terms of 21 days is the statutory period for advertising those changes. This could result in negative unintended consequences over the coming weeks by encouraging people to come and long stay park on those on-street locations. And it also wouldn't be fair to all the other locations in the city where parking charges have been increased on street and no such concession is being granted. So as a result, I won't be extending the temporary suspension, having now understood the process. But I will be listening to and engaging with communities affected by these changes to understand their concerns. We'll be analysing the parking data as these changes bed in, and we will be reviewing the impact of this decision at appropriate points throughout the year. So 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in after the implementation. And if we want to make any changes, if there is a feel that we need to make any minor amendments, then we will follow the correct statutory process at those points. So it's a case of watching, listening, learning, and talking to the communities who are impacted. So from the decisions that are in front of me today, I'd like to go with option 1. I would like to pause the advertising of implementing the changes on a Sunday morning in Micklegate and Priory Street to allow some engagement with those communities who attend the churches in that area. Given that that hasn't yet been advertised, it gives us an opportunity to have a bit of further engagement around their specific concerns in that area. But for parts 2 and 3, to extend the temporary suspension of parking charges on Micklegate and Priory Street, I would like to revert to the advertised and legal charges that were approved at full council. And similarly, to implement a temporary suspension of parking charges at Bishopthorpe Road, again, I am going to implement the advertised and legal charges that were approved at full council. And in the case of both of those communities, this week, I am going to meet with businesses and churchgoers to understand their concerns and listen to what they have to say. But in the meantime, we need to go forward with the advertised and legal charges that we implemented. And I just want to stress that the parking model that we put together, it reflects our commitment to reduce traffic congestion in the city centre and enable more people to choose sustainable transport options, and supports the aims and objectives of our transport strategy. And as I said, we're not about to revisit the whole model and make major changes to it. This is about listening to and making potentially minor amendments. So when it comes to the 4th aspect of the decision on my paper, I would like to delegate authority to the Director of Environment, Transport and Planning to make minor amendments to the parking charges to the financial year. And that's to allow those minor amendments to be made following that engagement. If, for example, we felt that it was important to introduce an option of a 30-minute parking charge, that kind of amendment, then it gives us the possibility of doing that. So I'm very grateful for the officers for putting together this paper at short notice and leading us through the process of how we continue to engage with communities, and I'm committed to doing that. But at the same time, we need to respect the decision that was made at full council and the outcome of that budget consultation. And we will watch and learn and see how those changes bed in and respond accordingly. So thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of this meeting, and I haven't any further urgent business. I'd like to thank all the public participants for their contributions, and very much take all of those things into account. And yeah, that's the end of the meeting for today. Thank you, everyone.